Welcome to Tales from the Switch Vault, where I, Jim, look back at some of the weird and wonderful games from the Nintendo Switch. This time I smash doors into people's faces in the Hotline Miami Collection. Created by the indie duo at Dennerton Games, Hotline Miami was released originally on PC in October 2012, before coming to PS3 and PS Vita in 2013. The sequel game, Hotline Miami 2, Wrong Number, came to the same platforms in March 2015. They were then bundled together in the Hotline Miami Collection and released in October 2017 on PS4, before coming via publisher Devolver Digital to Nintendo Switch in August 2019 and to all the other platforms later on. Both games play as a top-down, hyper-violent pixel art shooter, for want of a better word. Think of the first top-down GTAs, but far quicker and set within floors of buildings rather than across an open city. Players are tasked with taking out enemies, the Russian mafia, across multiple floors to complete the level's objectives. The game is built around the difficulty and that extremely quick retry function. It only takes a stray shot or a dog to lurch at you and take you out in an instant for it to be all over. If it sounds brutal, that's because it really is what I think a Tarantino-made game would look like. It's also really unforgiving, and with a top-down perspective, impossible to see all the enemies as you start a level. Trial and error is key. Figuring out who can see and shoot you through the glass, for instance. Then picking your way through the rooms and corridors. Everyone is well armed, but on the flip side you can use those guns and melee weapons you find or take off enemies to take them all out. Shooting works really well with the twin sticks. Just aim in the direction and fire. Having a limited ammo count means you are constantly using and throwing weapons, quite literally at enemies to knock them down, which is maybe my favourite mechanic here. Melee weapons such as the baseball bat or the excellent katana can be used forever, if you can get close enough to the enemies to use them. A single shot or a thwack from a pipe will take you out instantly. It's hard, and to level this out a bit, the player can select a mask at the start of the level that gives you a bonus, such as starting with a gun or making movement faster. They can drastically alter your playstyle and make the levels a bit easier. Even though the masks are a big part of the game, you still need to unlock most of them through playing the levels or finding secrets. Hotline Miami 2 alters things a little, with giving characters set weapons or in one instance giving you two characters to control at once. Personally, not all the changes work for the best for me, but it keeps the classic formula from the first game, meaning it's still hugely enjoyable. Visually, I can only describe this game as grungy pixel art. I'm a particular fan of the blood oozing out of bodies onto the floor after a kill, particularly with the katana that slices them in half. The knife has the blood squirting out in an arc. In the UK, this is an 18 rated game and for good reason. It's actually tough for designing the houses though. The top-down format has you constantly just showing carpets and wooden floors. These wider world designs are pretty basic, but I'm glad they prioritised the feel of the game over the looks. Don't get me wrong, it looks cool, and the neon 80s colour palette is an excellent choice. It really stands out in the indie genre at that time. I like the cutscenes as they're really snappy, but you get a real look at these characters, and the mask blown up on the menu as you select one is really cool. Remember, this is a game from 2012, and you only have to see where things go with the likes of the stunning Katana Zero to show that I am very excited for their next game. I think they can work wonders with the pixel art format. The music is weird, trippy and meandering between levels, and then really cool, quick electronic beats within them. It really suits the violence and helps the player line up with the fast-paced action. The aim of the developers was to create more of a film soundtrack than the game one. They failed in getting licenses for a temporary soundtrack, so instead gathered around 2,000 free-to-download tracks from Bandcamp. This is where they found many of the artists such as Moon, whose tracks were directly put into the game, and then others such as Scattle, who were tasked with creating new tracks. As for the in-game sounds, such as punching an enemy in the head on the ground, has some real weight and heft to it. The gunfire sounds great, and I love the swish of the doors as they open. These sounds popping off as you slash your way through a bunch of rooms really add to the mood and feedback of the game. The hook for me are those fast, furious levels that are hard but reload instantly to get you right back in there. Overcoming that frustrating and just beating a level relatively smoothly keeps you coming back for more. There are pretty generous checkpoints, usually on each floor of a building, so you're not having to complete a whole level in one go. It's also never slow, you barely pause during a sequence unless there's a dog or a guard on patrol who would otherwise see you. It actually reminds me a lot of something like Super Meat Boy or Celeste, in that once you zone in on the flow of the game, you just glide through the levels. In Hotline Miami, it's almost a ballet after you know who and where the enemies are. Pulling off a chain of kills via punching a guy, stealing his bat, killing the dog, knocking out an enemy with the door, throwing the bat and picking up a shotgun to twirl 180 and kill everyone is so satisfying. There are not too many games like this on Switch, but particularly that grungy, violent, drug-filled lifestyle. With the original being set in 1989 Miami, it brings up a very different world to our own. This dingy underworld with you massacring countless Russian mobsters for opaque reasons gives this game a unique feel. Tonally, it's really strong, with the ramping up of missions being matched with a descent into further madness. I cannot think of another game where I am actually questioning if the current sequence in-game is real or not. On the Switch 2 they broadly run fine. I cannot see any notable improvements beyond having a bigger screen. The larger Joy-Con sticks and buttons do help with comfort and application though. However, there was one issue with the reticle not appearing for a weapon during one level, and I was actually unable to turn the character. A quick death and restart resolved this, but was mildly annoying to see. The collection can be beaten in about 14 hours, but there are a ton of secrets and masks to unlock, alongside trying to get higher grading on each of the levels. There's certainly some replayability, especially with the new masks to alter your playstyle. I'm a huge fan of the Don Juan horse mask that makes doors lethal, whittling down enemies so quickly. One aspect I regret not doing when I was heavily into these games back on the PS Vita was looking into speedrunning. It's not the biggest community, but the levels being beatable in about 30 seconds hits that sweet spot for me for not being overly long and replayable. Dennerton Games is a Swedish indie studio made up of Jonathan Soderstrom and Dennis Wedlin. Soderstrom had created a few games in the Game Maker software, and by 2011 had met Wedlin, who was the singer of the band Fucking Werewolf Asso, in which they had both decided to create a freeware game in the keyboard drum set Fucking Werewolf for one of the singer's songs. A while later, Soderstrom, having decided to try and make a career of it in games, decided to make something bigger and again contacted Wedlin to collaborate. Thus, they formed Dennerton, a combination of their first names. Hotline Miami was created over just 9 months using an old prototype as the basis. Soderstrom is a known advocate of the rapid game design philosophy. Following the commercial success of the first game, they began working on DLC for it, which would eventually turn into the second game as its own release. A big part was incorporating all the unused concepts of the first game, building on the story and gameplay mechanics of the first. It was released in 2015. Currently, we have only seen a short teaser trailer a few years ago showing their next game, some sort of platformer in a sci-fi or alien world. It looks intriguing. Back in 2012, Hotline Miami was nominated for numerous awards, in particular at the Independence Games Festival in 2013, including the Excellence in Audio, Excellence in Design, and the Seamus McNally Grand Prize Awards. Numerous outlets raved about the title, making several Game of the Year lists that year. The collection sits at an 82 on Metacritic for the Switch, and Hotline Miami sold over 1.5 million copies on its own by 2015. I think one of the biggest takeaways from making these video essays is just how many of the early Switch games were ports of existing titles. From Nintendo's side, they had a ton of games that barely sold due to the poor performance of the Wii U. It definitely made sense to fill out these gaps and bring new titles to a whole new audience. On the third-party side, I can see the hesitancy of not bringing titles across. Look at EA that barely touched the Switch with a barge pole, so to see older, smaller titles that were probably easier to port makes a lot of sense. If you look back over the whole Switch life cycle, it's easy to remember all the new games, but focusing in on the first 2 years is pretty old game heavy. But at the time, nobody knew if this new hybrid handheld system would be a success. Pouring in money into porting games was still a risk. As the console sale numbers shot up and it turned into an indie machine, it was games like Hotline Miami that got a huge lift. And honestly, I was super happy to get one of my all-time favourite classics onto a modern handheld system. I do have plenty of criticisms. It is damn hard, particularly if you need to throw or shoot a weapon off screen. You miss so many shots. You can learn, but it takes time. The second game's larger maps are a detriment. You get sniped off screen far more often, and it's frustrating to get through all but the last enemy, only to lose to a misplaced punch. In the first game, the hospital stealth level really kills the pacing. Oh, and there were some questionable scenes from the second game that probably should have been removed. Still, I absolutely love the first game, and the collection is actually an absolute bargain when it's on sale. It's actually one of the few games where I prefer melee weapons over guns, but it's great that players have those choices. I can't wait to see what these guys produce next. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe for more weekly Nintendo Switch video game essays, and comment below which was the hardest game you've ever beaten. Right, I need to know, go get that Cobra mask for killing throws.